Ladies and gentlemen, before we show our presentations, let me introduce our team. I'm Tiana Nursakina and Risa Aroshida, Ajahra, Yasmin Rahmania, Alfi, Fahimia, and then Alia. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and now let's open our meeting by saying Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. The next agenda is presentation session. For the first turn will be given by the first presenter. Please welcome Alfi Fahimia.
Okay, thank you, Diana. The first education is interesting inclusive practices for early children, general educators, future first teacher. We provides an opportunity to lay the foundation for teacher knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs for developing effective interaction for students with or at risk for disabilities. Next, general and special educator role. Special educator and general educator tend to have different roles and responsibilities, where services are provided in separate settings. Next, the need for strong field placement and mentor. Darling and Harmon suggest that field experience are critical because VST began teacher education program with frequency nation about education. And next, theoretical framework. The experience of each of the general education PTS can be further understand through the lens of Gervin Brander's ecological system theory. This theory possesses various aspects of the environment influence development. Ecological factors equivalent how PTS relate enrich the environment, including relationship other, support, and teaching techniques. Van ecological system comprise 5 subsystems: microsystem, mesosystem, ecosystem, macrosystem, and chronosystem. Design rational. Within an ecological framework, we just toss a phenomenological approach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alvi. Next, turn is for the second speaker. Please welcome Yasmin Rahmania.
Okay, Tiana, thank you. Well, here I will continue the next presentation. Research context. Farisal School is a public school for children aged 3 to 21 years who are identified as having cognitive disabilities. There are currently 4 groups: early childhood, middle or primary, middle or high school, and high school. Next, data collection. Phenomenological interview and observation performed with HPST, as both are considered basic qualitative data analysis methods. Both data, scores, interview, and observations were analyzed to determine if any similarities and or difference between PTS. Next, interview. Our data underwent an initial analysis using open coding strategy to identify initial themes. And next, observation. HPST is observed on 3 occasions during one semester. Observation were recorded by the university supervisor and include scripts of interaction between the PST and the children on classroom, and detailed description of the activities and lessons undertaken by every PST. And next, finding in context. So, initial interview or observation uses the image exchange communication system to support nonverbal children in daily routines and support communication through learning similarities and or difference between PST. Thank you. I return it to the moderator. Interview and observations were analyzed to determine if any similarities and or difference between PTS. Next, interview. Our data underwent an initial analysis using open coding strategy to identify initial themes. And next, observation. HPST is observed on 3 occasions during one semester. Observation were recorded by the university supervisor and include scripts of interaction between the PST and the children on classroom, and detailed description of the activities and lessons undertaken by every PST. And next, finding in context. So, initial interview or observation uses the image exchange communication system to support nonverbal children in daily routines and support communication through learning similarities and or difference between PST. Thank you. I return it to the moderator.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin. And next, turn is for the third speaker. It's me. Choose midpoint interview or observations. During the second observation, she was observed leading a science activity that focused on magnetism, such as identifying which objects make a pulling or pushing force on other objects. During these lessons, she was observed giving a child different magnetic tools, example, magnetic clip and magnet wand, and allowing them to explore which items were pulling or pushing away from the different magnetic objects. She was observed modeling the teacher's language, its metal so the magnet pick it up, and modifying the activity based on individual needs. The original lessons was written for a preschool class of children without special needs and included vocabulary words such as magnetic and metal, and promote the children to articulate why an item might be magnetic. At firstly, she was observed demonstrating magnetic properties to students using authentic objects such as metal tray and incorporating content words that were accompanied with pictures. The lesson plan was reduced in time and was differentiated for individual children, including the use of large objects for children who were unable to use a pencil grasp. During the lesson, Shu focused on exploring the magnets rather than defining magnetic properties. Next, Shu's final interview or observations. During the third observation, Shu was observed teaching a literacy lesson focused on letter sounds. Shu differentiated the lesson to focus on sounds in general, while still maintaining the letter sounds objective for the children without disabilities. During the lesson, Shu was observed making a letter sound into a recording device and then having the children who were unable to voice the sound press a button to make the sound. Technology was used throughout the lesson to provide the children with both visual and auditory example of the sound being discussed. While she was observed introducing some consonant sounds, S, T, L. Her lesson plan indicated differentiations from the original lesson she developed for a class of children without developmental delays. When she was asked about the lesson and her overall experience during her interview, she noted, I had so much fun with that. I've seen my teacher use the recording device a ton of times. If I got, if it worked, for other things it made sense to use it with the consonant sounds. And choose interpretive analysis and discussions. Based on interviews and observations, show beginner placement eager and excited about the clinical experience with students with severe disabilities. In the beginning of the school years, she was observed using supports that her mentor teacher had in place, such as picture schedules. During her first observations, she appeared to be somewhat hesitant about how to engage with students, knowing that most students could not verbally communicate with her. As the semester progressed, Shi's body language became more relaxed, and she was observed making more on-the-spot decisions. By the third observation, she was observed differentiating throughout the lesson for a number of children with differing abilities. Next, Anissa. Anissa's initial interview or observations. Anissa had always known that she wanted to be a teacher. Anissa worked with young children since her sophomore year of high school, and then decided to apply for her undergraduate degree, degree in early childhood education. In her first observations, Anissa taught a science activity about leaves in the fall and how they change color. In Anissa's post observations, her supervisor helped her reflect on accommodating all students and identifying some ways that she could include all students in future lessons. At the end of the post observations, Anissa expressed concerns about her ability to reach all the children in the class. Expressed the realizations that not only were not only were some students physically not able to participate, but also that some students were not able to communicate verbally. Anissa's midpoint interview or observations. By the second observations, Anissa was developing closer relationship with the students and slowly becoming more comfortable with supporting the needs of every student, such as communicating with students who are nonverbal. Anissa used a gentler tone when explaining activities. Anissa stated in her post observations interview, I was still finding ways to connect with every student, especially the children who are not verbal. Sometimes it's hard to exactly find ways to form connections with them and form a relationship with them. I know is not going to be the same as the verbal students or the children who are awake. Example, not sleeping. But it's just a little difficult. Yeah, next turn is for the fourth speaker is Ajahra Nurfaujia.
Okay, thank you, moderator. Um, I want to tell you about Anissa's perspective, Anissa's interpretive analysis discussion, Emma's interview and observation, Emma's midpoint, and Emma's third observation. First is Anissa's perspective. There is two topics, which is Anissa's technique and Anissa's um, interview. So, during the third observation, Anissa included differentiated techniques in her lesson. She included different cultural perspective about holidays, used picture cards for both the daily schedule for the classroom rules, and developed a book that allowed students with limited verbal communication to communicate their choices about what holiday they celebrate. Students were actively in learning centers. Of course, Anissa was clearly comfortable. Anissa was clearly comfortable building stronger relationships with students by asking them questions, listening to their responses, and by providing bi-directional communication with students who have limited verbal capabilities. Reflecting on her experience, Anissa stated in her post-observation interview, the strategies work for the students with special needs, but I think even some of those things could be helpful with kids in general. So uh, there is Anissa's interview. Next, Anissa's interpretive analysis discussion. Based on interviews and observations, Anissa began her placement excited for the opportunity to learn, but nervous that she would not be able to connect to the students with disabilities. In the beginning of the school year, Anissa observed her mentor teacher teach the students and helped one-on-one, and eventually taught small and whole group lessons. In the first lessons, Anissa thought it was observed that she did not have specific instructional strategies that would allow students with severe disabilities to feel engaged or connected to the lesson. As the semester progressed, Anissa made connections with individual students and practiced strategies modeled by her mentor teachers. As Anissa began to feel more comfortable with the students, she understood that they were able to comprehend and retain information, and she was able to develop lessons that included all students using sensory play, picture schedules, and communication devices. Third, I will tell you about interview and observation. Emma previously worked at therapeutic and recreational horseback riding center where she would go to the Special Olympics with the riding team. Although Emma had some experience in working students with disabilities, this was Emma's first experience in a classroom setting with academic content. She stated in her post-observation interview that I haven't worked with children with special needs, so it was overwhelming to see how different it was. During Emma's first observation, she worked with a student one-on-one in art class. Emma supported the student by using verbal and gestural support, such as hand over hand to help the student stay on task. Emma also worked hand over hand with the student to help him paint with the student throughout the lesson. Because Emma's class was considered a behavioral class that focused on applied behavior analysis or ABA strategies, Emma expressed concern when she stated, if a student's running away, I'm very unsure of, of the physical side of things. I want to keep them safe.
And is for the fourth speaker, Lisa Rashida.
Okay, thank you, Tiana. I will continue the next presentation. The title is Interpretive Analysis and Discussion by Emma. Based on interview and observation, Emma had not worked with students with disabilities. Based on interviews and observations, Emma had not worked with students with severe disabilities in a classroom setting until displacement. She was excited but nervous about building trust with the students. By the end of the semester, Emma was observed teaching students academic tasks while establishing effective classroom management skills, which helped the students stay focused and build trust. And then Emma appeared comfortable in the classroom and appeared to easily interact with the students. And Emma appeared comfortable in the and Emma and Emma appeared comfortable in the classroom and appeared to and Emma appeared comfortable in the classroom and appeared to easily interact with the students. Next, analysis and findings. Based on data from both interviews and observation were analyzed using an appear Next, analysis and findings. Based on data from both interviews and observations, were analyzed using an a priori coding technique. The a priori themes included concern, lack of knowledge for teaching, and a lack of experience with children with disabilities. The first, author created a table using the aforementioned a priori codes. A second analysis by the researchers allowed the data to be further reduced, allowing for more meaningful conclusions. This included combining lack of a pedagogic second analysis A second analysis by the researchers allowed the data to be further reduced, allowing for more meaningful conclusions. This included combining lack of pedagogical knowledge and lack of experience working with children with disabilities into one code, and finalizing the three main themes of the study. Next, the first theme that is anxiety. Observations. Next, the first theme that is anxiety. Observations of each PST and interview data all indicate positive growth in PST confidence related to teaching and ability to include students with disabilities in meaningful instructional tasks. The participants were more comfortable with unique characteristics, e.g., children who use feeding tubs, were nonverbal, etc. And they didn't consider students with severe disabilities as being out of the ordinary. All three of the participants volunteered for a placement in a special education setting but still acknowledged that they were nervous upon starting. During the semester, the PhDs were participating in 3 universities courses: Basic of Special Education in Early Childhood Education, Language, Literacy and Development, and Science Methods. The Language, Literacy and Development course required the PhDs to study the language development of a selected child. Anissa expressed concern about observing the language development of a child who was nonverbal. In the Science Method course, all 3 PhDs were required to plan and implement 2 lessons, one of which was a digital presentation on a local butterfly species. Concern about the variety of developmental levels in one classroom and attention span were noted. Chu expressed concern about receiving credit on an assignment that would need to be heavily modified prior to implementation. Okay, next. The second theme is gaining pedagogical knowledge related to children with disabilities. All of the participants in this study noted an increase in their ability to differentiate lessons to meet the needs of children with severe disabilities and to incorporate universal design for learning or UDL. Lesson plan analysis demonstrated the use of visual supports, assistive technology, and modified content. While other early childhood teacher preparation programs may vary in access to high-quality special education field experiences. As the semester progressed, all 3 PhDs noted their increased abilities in meeting the needs of all the children in the classroom. In Shu and Anissa's classrooms, children with cognitive impairments were combined with in Shu and Anissa's classrooms. Maaf sendawa. In Shu and Anissa's classrooms, children with cognitive impairments were combined with peers without disabilities. Having such a wide array of abilities in a single classroom required that lessons be heavily differentiated and modified. Observation of modification and accommodations, such as assistive technology, were routinely used, and all of the PhDs share their excitement about being able to observe and implement strategies that would not have otherwise been a part of the university's teacher education program.
Last, please welcome Alia.
Okay, thank you, Tiana. Implication for early childhood teacher education. The participants' 3 PhDs are diverse in educational background and experience with young children with and without disabilities. Researchers may want to focus on the benefits and weaknesses of different settings. The examples is special education settings that include children without disabilities versus those that do not. This study expanded the types of required experience that early childhood PhDs have as a part of their preparation. Future studies should expand on the pedagogical knowledge needed and combine field placement that specifically supports students in teaching and supporting students with served disabilities. The second is research. Based on observation, we feel it is plausible that self-efficacy may have increased. Further, these results may suggest that by providing more access to specific file experience in classroom with students with served disabilities, teacher education programs can benefit both PSTs and the children in their future classroom. The results of this study are on exploratory initiative. Salah Zahra. Initial step and may provide insight into improving early childhood teacher education. To this, Rasha and Puig 2011 studied the reflections of PSTs seeking dual special and general education ECE certification and found the PSTs who had at least one placement in a special education setting demonstrated more flexibility. The third is evidence-based practice. Based on reflections for this study and the nature of current classroom demographics, it is important that pre-service programs develop general and special education teachers in areas that will enhance the quality of learning for students with served disabilities. Pre-service program can be reserved to include coursework and field experience that teach high-quality inclusive practice, as well as internationally teach pre-service teachers to understand why and how to teach instruction systematically through that-based instruction. This sample progress monitoring. Use evidence-based intervention strategies such as applied behavior analysis or ABA to help support students with severe disabilities is another important element to strengthen pre-service programs in inclusive instruction. Additionally, a quality pre-service teacher program will support pre-service teachers in their understanding of the importance of teaching both daily living, job, and communicative skills, as well as having access to the general education curriculum to help students with severe disabilities research their ultimate level of functioning as productively and independently as possible. And then, university-school partnerships. It is critical that universities work closely with school administrators to maximize the likelihood that PSTs will be placed with strong mentor teachers who can provide expert model of high-quality programming using evidence-based practice. Historically, relationships between researchers and school-based practitioners were often heavily directed by researchers' interests for the purpose of extracting data and or testing interventions, with little school input. Gitlin and Russell 1000 Gitlin and Russell's 1994. The next limitations. As with any study, there are limitations in these findings. The first is that each of the PSTs in the study agreed to be placed in a special education setting for their field placement. The close location of Firesaw School, the university should also be considered. Maybe enough for me. Thank you, Tiana.
Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we are come to the last agenda. We would like to say thanks again for presenter and all the audiences for active participations. Hopefully, the presentations will give benefit for us. Thank you. Thank you for attention. See you later. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.